Thank you so much for being here. It's afternoon in exactly the afternoon in the East Coast United States, and close to afternoon in if you know mid-central time in US, but it's a late evening in Europe. Thank you so much for being here. A few remarks. If you allow me, humble remarks about our conference. And then we'll turn the floor over to you, just your comments, your suggestions, your questions, your advice, critical comments. Everything is accepted. We will be on the record so that we will return to your comments and check all the chat and incorporate in our decisions in the future. Quick sentimental comment, and then some practical practical comments and words, and then we'll definitely turn floor over to you. Well, you know what? I was thinking about my parents after this conference just few minutes ago, and I think that in theory they should have been canceled by me. My parents, nice people, both professors. My mother is my late mother. Was a professor. My father, who is alive, is a professor. He's in his mid-80s. They were sexist in their attitudes in the past. They used ethnic stereotypes in their judgments. They were homophobic for the most part of their lives. They were very much intolerant in certain situations and from a social standpoint, even though they consider themselves liberal scholars and anti-communist in so many ways. They were actually in favor of physical punishment of children. Well, I was a recipient end of that. So it's not really physical punishment, but slapping and hitting and even verbal abuse was considered to be normal in their culture. But of course, I have say this a big footnote. I'm being facetious. And I don't want to be sarcastic and downplay the results of academic research and saying, look, everybody should be canceled because we all have certain transgressions in our past. But in a way, well, these 3 days taught us about the importance of cultural contexts, the importance of history. Gender matters, race matters in our discussions. Social factors matter. And all of them should be taken in consideration in our research and are being taken in consideration in our research. We talked, and Serge Samolenko and I talked yesterday about what can we do, and certainly, yes, I'll disclose that we do have an intention to publish the results of our conference in some way, and we will discuss with you. We don't want to move and take on a traditional path so that we publish a volume and 200 of copies are available for people and just becomes an obscure volume. It's a possibility, of course, and we can do that. And we can. However, we think about some innovative ways to combine publications, online presentations, and something that will reach a larger audience. So we'll send you our suggestions, and certainly we'll invite you to contribute in the form of a paper or maybe a short paper. We'll think about new format for the 21st century for, well, year 2022, something that will be academic, will be really strong from scientific standpoint, and yet available for larger audience. We can distribute to students and faculty and all those interested all over the world, and well, would be in English. We'll discuss this. Also, we're developing our podcasts, and those of you, and we will ask you to contribute if you don't mind, 30-40 minutes lectures that you can suggest. We will record you, and then we'll broadcast, and by doing that we can reach a larger audience in the world, in your countries, in the United States, in Europe, in Africa, in India, in Brazil, well, everywhere in the world. We hope so, and that's we will just hope to have certain promotion behind those efforts. It sounds maybe a little bit funny and silly in certain way, but my students told me, Professor, the younger generation just of students who will learn more about what you teach in history, in social sciences, political science, rhetoric, sociology, psychology, they are well, they got used to those short skits, such as TikTok. And if you can prepare those 40 and 50 seconds skits of your research to spark interest, it will spark, not necessarily will cultivate their knowledge. I'm not really that naive, but will spark the interest in our research. Saying simply, Professor, just be more real, be more realistic, use contemporary methods to deliver your message to us and 17, 18, 19-year-olds. Now they will be sparked and will follow the links and learn from your lectures and podcasts and for your publications. I know, I don't want to make it trivial and trivialize academic research and just make it break it down into stuff popping flashy fireworks. No, but at least the method that we can use can spark the interest once again. So, well, thank you so much for being with us. And let me ask a question that's I usually ask my children when they come back from school. What did you learn at school? And we know the answer. They'll say nothing. Well, I know. They're joking about this. What did we learn from these 3 days? And so what will we need to do in the future to be relevant as a group, be cohesive, be influential, and well, make this world a little bit better place for everybody? Just what can we do, and what have you learned? Who wants to speak? Who wants to just add?
So, I mean, I'll just jump in since I also study public memory in my other kind of day job. And so I'm still kind of wrestling with and thinking about what is it that we do with the things that we now deem problematic from the past. And so Tyler's most recent comment about kind of all of the multiple ways in which we can handle this situation really has me thinking. And, you know, I'll point to just some of the things that we were talking about in the chat. Thinking about how to open up a broader discourse about these. And so I guess to connect this to the conference theme, then my preference would not be to, like, quote unquote, cancel these figures, but to think about what other alternatives there are, and you know, what that would look like for continuing to have a conversation about some of these problematic figures, recognizing, as Leslie pointed out in the chat, that there's a burgeoning body of research on trauma and its relationship to public memory, alongside with sort of the historic pilgrimages on school field trips to go to Confederate sites for many students that were raised in the South in the United States. And so Florian used the word reprogramming, but so kind of thinking about, what, and cancel culture, I think, can be a useful metaphor here as we kind of push past just, you know, erasing or getting rid of, but trying to have a broader conversation, which I know is easier said than done, but offering greater context to some of the narratives that we typically share, or melting them down and turning them into park benches, as Florian mentioned. So thinking about cancel culture and public memory as a way to have a conversation about moving forward in tough conversations about our past, and whether it's possible or desirable to even erase people fully. So those are things that I am continuing to mull over, especially inspired by our last panel. So yeah, Dad, I learned nothing.
Please, Rod, please. Mm-hmm.
So I'm struck with one thought, and then, something I learned. The thought, just, when Jennifer was talking, is I think I might start working on an episode of Black Mirror, if it ever comes back, about when we start canceling history, what's the impact of that? What might be the dysfunctional aspects of what, when we erase all the things that are bad, do the things that are good become less good? And how do those things get reevaluated? And, it raises all sorts of, really weird questions that I think would make a good Black Mirror episode. But the other, the thing I was originally going to talk about was, I think what the conference kind of clearly outlined for me is that it's not cancel culture. I mean, we talk about cancel culture, but that implies that there's a culture. There would actually have to be a number of cultures to make up the kind of cancel culture, if there was a cancel culture. It's a process. Cancellation is a process, just like assassinating character is a process. And I think the notion of cancel culture is just, it was a good term to kind of bring people together to think about it. But I think in the final analysis is really, we're looking at a process and we're not looking at a group of people, or it's a verb and not a noun. And so that's my thought.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much. Before I turn the floor to Dr. Samolenko, Serge, just a quick reminder that we can also discuss the framing questions of our conference. In particular, just I want to share with you that those questions quickly, just literally 20 seconds. Is cancel culture a new phenomenon? Is being canceled as a form of character assassination? It is really about character. And what does it mean to say you're being canceled? And so what is the rhetorical impact of claiming to be canceled? And how do you engage in communication techniques to serve that someone gets canceled? In other words, what is the rhetorical makeup of a cancellation? But just so we'll stop sharing here. And
if I may, and I've just reached the Indira Gandhi phase, and one of the former prime ministers. Your work is so much, what I keep reading on the Facebook, that I'm so disheartened that no, I will not be able to, prove equal to the task. And there's a lot of work in India, when I start reading, it's not character assassination by or cancel culture by one. It comes from various angles, regional parties, national parties, and so on. So and while writing this book, I have worked on a very major project in which I have written about 100 martyrs from my state of Punjab. I have managed to do that, but which was collecting about, gallantry awards, collecting the information, going to villages, collecting information. But your work is so, and Serge has been very nice. He's been sending me a lot of material. But you people have done so much of work. I just hope I'm able to remove that blockade and get down to writing and complete the work. So I need your wishes for that.
We wish you. All the wishes come from us and just from our colleagues. Of course. Please stay in touch and thank you for a stimulating paper today, a presentation, and definitely let's work together. Absolutely. So anybody else about, you can just
Serge,
jump in.
Did you want to weigh in? You had your hand.
No, I just wanted to piggyback on the discussion of history, because I just wanted to point it out that removing history has different implication for different countries, and American history is so young. It's literally so young, and compared to old Europe, it's an infancy. And what will happen if you remove some important parts of this foundation? What you're gonna left with? I mean, you can always rewrite history and build new history, but yeah, it's interesting to think about different implications and maybe the outcomes of actions. Because as a person who is a structural researcher, I always think about structuration. I mean, once you start something, it might reproduce some old patterns, but maybe it will just eliminate them, and you never know what the new reality will be. So yeah, it's always interesting to think about that.
It's always thinking forward. Michael, please just welcome.
Right, thank you. A few things come to mind. I think one is that we need to have a sense of humility about the possibility that our descendants may find us problematic, and how could they have flown around the world on jets knowing about climate change just so they could meet for a few hours and talk to other people and then fly back. I mean, that's just insane. But it's been normal for us until recently. The positions that we have, that we think that we are on the right side of history, and perhaps we need to be open to the fact that we may be wrong. And then just getting back to the statue thing, I was reminded of a recent article in The Guardian, and it was, let's bring all the statues down, let's just destroy them. And I thought at the time when that article came out that I'm glad the ancient Greeks and Romans didn't think that way, because if the people that hated Caligula and the years after had destroyed every single sculpture of him, we'd have no idea what he looked like. So yeah, I think that there's we can't just go on this binge every historical period where we think we have the answers and that those who came before us were evil. Yeah, I think we need to step back a bit.
Quick comment, Michael. Thank you so much. Well, I was born in the Soviet Union, although I spent most of my life in the United States, but I do remember Soviet Union. And I do remember my parents told me I saw the monuments had been removed in 1920s, the monuments of Russian emperors and dukes and archdukes, who were there, who ruled Russia for centuries. Many of them been removed, many remained. And then 1990s, I didn't witness that, but well, I saw that many communist memorials, most of them also been removed. And then back in 2000s, well, this is the irony of this, there's the monuments from, well, the emperors were erected back. Putin himself, the president of Russia, was opening the monuments for Alexander III, the most reactionary, the most anti-liberal of Russian emperors. And so there was a monument just erected just to commemorate whatever it was, history. So the returning back, and again, all the dukes and all those individuals who owned slaves, by the way, Russian serfdom was a form of slavery. When you own a peasant and can buy her and sell her, it's a slavery in my mind. And yet the monuments are back. So it's a matter of a personal opinion, a historical perspective, and contemporary political climate in the countries again. And so Florian suggested that if we just crush everything in bits and pieces, that's what's left, and that we must frame those bits and pieces or monuments and teach children, grandchildren about what it was and how things should be. April, please go ahead. I don't want to monopolize the floor.
Yeah, no, first, just in terms of making observations about reflecting on the value of the conference, I want to say, as someone, who's very interested in doing research on one of these topics, this conference was hugely valuable, just to stimulate my thinking, and then also have the opportunity to connect to other people who are also working on related topics, sort of breaking the isolation, I guess, scholarly isolation, but then also a lot of the isolation that's come about as part of the COVID policy, what it's sort of done. People are quite separate from each other. So I wanted to say thank you to you organizers and participants as well, because I've greatly appreciated it. That I wanted to make, I guess, a response about whether, sort of a conceptual response about whether we should focus on thinking of cancellation as a process or a noun. And I wanted to throw my plea into the ring for consideration, which is that I was thinking we might also consider it as an adjective. And that's because I'm sort of interested in this sort of societal dynamics related to cancellations and cancel culture. And so, I think it would be, there are some interesting questions. For example, there's a lot more cancellation going on now in the United States today than there was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever. And maybe there's more cancellation going on in country A versus country B. so maybe, you could think of it as an adjective, like, this country is more cancel-ish than it used to be, or the United States is more cancel-ish than Mexico, something. So I'm sort of being a little humorous, but I actually think that unless we have a way of characterizing that facet of a society, then we can never begin to explore what might make, what's contributing to a society becoming more cancel-ish. Or I would argue, we'd love to know what might make it be less cancel-ish. So anyway, just my plea for cancellation or cancel-ishness as an adjective for investigation.
Thank you, April. And there's a nice comments about the attempts to create typology of cancellation, and just to maybe scale a continuum that we can measure and discuss. And once again, also, my humble opinion, that's in addition to case studies, and thank you to historians and sociologists and anthropologists, we in political science, we need to provide more empirical data, and we know about this, and definitely public opinion studies and surveys is a great, incredible source of information. So from moving from theoretical and speculative, which is fine, absolutely fine, but we need to do more empirical and provide some facts and experiments if possible. They're very difficult to conduct.
One thing that April's comment just made me think of is, the international comparisons and transnational resonances of cancel culture as a term has been really fascinating over the past week. And, Emily, our keynote speaker from Pew, obviously has studied the perceptions of cancel culture and opinions on it in a United States perspective. And I remain, as I think many of you all were, curious about the international resonance of the term. In fact, many of you pointed out that although things similar to cancellations seem to be occurring in other countries, that maybe the term isn't used there all that often. And so maybe there are other terms that people use that capture some of these impulses, but and that, of course, then I'm just taking you down what was happening in my brain. And so then, of course, the next thing, as we started thinking about intercultural communication, are the dimensions of culture that we've written about in the book, and that we draw from decades of research into culture. And the idea of whether a society is open or closed, I think might be kind of a first step. I know that's sort of a shorthand term, but as we classify cultures, we often talk about the degree to which they're open versus closed. And Eric can probably say more about this as someone trained in psychology, but thinking about, cultures more prone to cancellation as being closed cultures that aren't as open to new information and that kind of thing. I'm sure it's not a perfect parallel, but kind of connecting that with some of the intercultural communication research can help us identify, to what extent are cultures prone to cancellation, and, can we create some type of typology or empirical way of understanding this?
I think it's a very good parallel. And true that if some say what history is not replicable, well, we learn from history and we compare cases and see lots of replicability in historical cases. If you go just speaking about history and the past events. And the most important point, yes, Jenny, I agree with you that we do this cross-national, cross-cultural analysis, and replicability in social science is a key issue. We can find some phenomena in the United States, but so is it replicable in India, in China, South Korea, and Netherlands, in Africa, in other parts of the world? It's a very important issue, and we're happy that we're on the same page, and so we find some corresponding and some some evidence which you can replicate in other countries or translate into language and become relevant to our students. So anybody else? As I said, I want to repeat that those of you who want to we talk about this conference separately and about publications, but any ideas, essays that you have, feel free to send to us. We can post on our blog, and it will reach, at this moment, we reach hundreds of people around the world, but we hope it will be thousands in the future. That's a bit, certainly it's a sort of online publication, and you have all the authorship and all copyrights are yours. You post it, and we'll help it disseminate initial ideas, thoughts. So we do have a blog, a CARP blog, and we'll welcome your entries right there. Plus, we'll be soliciting your podcasts. We'll talk to you, and so those of you who want to simply offer this opportunity to us, please contact us, and so we will figure out. And so definitely any podcast, even though this will be on our site, but you will be author of a podcast. You can quote yourself, and we'll quote you, of course.
Eric, I just want to point out, I really appreciate Rod's comment in the chat as well, that if we're thinking about the Hofstede dimensions of culture, cancellation certainly would play out differently in individualistic versus collectivistic cultures. So another thing that
it's a very good point.
Potentially test. I also, would you mind putting our framing questions back up again? I want to see if there's
certainly will do it. And please go over
other ones we should touch on.
Mm-hmm.
Face strategies too, excellent. One thing I didn't get to ask, I guess Florian is still here, so I can ask him now to get back into some of the specifics. But this first question about whether cancel culture is a new phenomenon or an offshoot of other things that we've seen, Martin identified public pressure as what he saw as one of the elements of cancel culture. In the case of Julia, would you say that there was public pressure or sort of more of an elite cabal?
Well, yeah.
I put you on the spot.
Yeah. The problem is that there are lots of key documents missing. So, well, if you look at the hegemony of Augustus, mass media, absolute power, one hand. So it's not it's not something that was bottom up, but if you do something top down for, don't know, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, it's implicated in the people's mind. Now they do it voluntarily, without knowing or without hesitating, and some writers in the Augustan era would not have taken the position of Julia, and 50 years later they could have done, but they didn't. And so there are interesting holes in our narratives and historiography, which can't be filled with our sources, but it can be filled with novels and films and a lot of what if then questions. So it was not demanded by the people, whatever the people may be, but that's one point I would have to discuss with Martin for some hours, drinking a lot of beer or wine.
Hopefully over a beer, yeah.
Yeah, so there's still room for discussion, yeah.
Yeah, because it is, I mean, this first question here, is cancel culture a new phenomenon? It is clear to me that certainly it has, whether it existed in the format that we see it today, the historical antecedents are very much there, in terms of creating a moral outrage, trying to hold people accountable and that kind of thing.
And I also want to emphasize that we talked about so-called neoliberal culture back. We'll talk about this on Saturday, and so it's a term which is definitely it's a work in progress. But the idea that a contemporary generation of students and younger people feel the sense of entitlement to, well, their own feelings. If I feel this, that is right. And this is, again, very nice developments. We need to be safe. We need to feel comfortable. We need to feel protected and taken care of. But it may become sort of a political offspin. There we go. So I need to be protected. Therefore, I feel that something is canceled and this is fine if something's canceled, because I feel safer from my standpoint. But the problem is that other students have different standpoints, and how we can reconcile this. So should I keep this questions or should I just stop sharing?
Well, let's see what Rod has to say first.
Yeah, Rod, please go ahead.
This had been raised earlier in the conference, at least the example, and I've been wrestling with the motivations for canceling. There are clearly people that are out there that have done things, and they've done things in the moment, and then what happens is that people kind of congregate to cancel. And an example would be Governor Cuomo, in terms of all of the allegations of sexual harassment that came out. That was kind of like organically derived. In a less offensive example, you have Mike Richards, who's the executive producer, or was the executive producer of Jeopardy. And nobody was going after Mike Richards for anything until he decided, after the year-long process of trying to find a host to replace Alec Trebek, that he ended up picking himself. He did a kind of Dick Cheney. And then people got upset because they had their own favorites. And then it was like, within a couple of days, people started digging into his background, which they hadn't done before, and then come to find out that there were a couple of suits that were against The Price is Right when he was a producer there. Not that he had anything personally to do with them, but since he was part of the show, he was tied in with them. And then they discovered this podcast in which he made, some, sexist and, racially, well, mostly anti-Semitic comments. But even Sony didn't know anything about the podcast. And it was almost as if there were people whose feelings were hurt that their favorite guest host didn't get to get the top job, and that Mike took it himself. And so they went to look for stuff on him, and then they happened to find it. And then now what has happened is, not only is he not the host, but he's lost both the executive producer job to Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. So I wonder about the legitimacy of motivation, in the cancellation process, and how that plays out. And so, just a thought. We're throwing forth all sorts of variables to take a look at, from gender to race to Hofstede to time of transgression and so forth. And so I'll just throw another one out there.
But that's a very good point. Canceling could be a goal for which, the organizer of a canceling, so the initiator, the attacker, can choose any method, by the way, and just to simply fish for any dirt, quote unquote, on the person, and then use gender, race, ethnicity, nationality, comments about gender, race, ethnicity, nationality, to derail the person, to cancel the person. So you're good.
Yeah, I thank my lucky stars that I got onto social media pretty late in life, because otherwise there would be so much shit that people would be able to dig up on me, so.
Yeah, because of our postings, likings, this is what we teach our students about reputation, but watch what you're doing, because it may echo in the future. That's a very good point. And again, that's I think it will be classical case about the cancel. Yes, it will be classical case. jeopardy, and this is what happened there. And probably we'll learn more about the motivation, about behind that decision. That's one of the examples of cancel culture, and definitely legal repercussions and possible troubles in the future. And the authorities decided just to choose the easier way. It's just ask him to resign, and probably the settlement was money was paid for him, and almost case closed. But we will study it as a classical case for us. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I know we talked about the second question on here as being canceled, a form of character assassination, and what does it really have to do with character yesterday? But I suppose I'm curious if the continuation of our conversations today have changed anybody's mind. Certainly, I think I remain convinced that, like most forms of character assassination, cancel culture is really about evacuating nuance and really collapsing people's character into one particular action or statement and that kind of thing. So I think see cancel culture as a form of character assassination that relies on a lot of similar tactics and rhetorical maneuvers as we've talked about in previous conferences. But if other folks have other thoughts, I would love to hear them. Or maybe we exhausted this conversation yesterday, and that's okay too.
That was a very good point. Good point about that. And also, we've been pointing out on Twitter, Jennifer, about people ask a question whether or not could be legitimate cancellation or character attacks the person. For example, a person who admitted of being rapist, for example, or a person who committed sexual assault, and just yes, was a fact. But is it okay to character assassinate this person? Can we call it this way? Maybe it's the choice of a term, which this is what we do, is we chose the term, but doesn't mean that every act of cancellation is unfair.
Yeah. I mean, so I think this really gets to, and this ties into what Josh was talking about yesterday, just like inoculation theory being sort of a morally neutral concept or theory, off, or I guess I would say a priori, we don't set out to decide that all character attacks are unfair lies and that kind of thing. In fact, much of our research has identified very real and very true and very important information that comes up to light when we seek to investigate other people. And so if we take the definition that we've been using since the beginning of the deliberate destruction of an individual's reputation, certainly I think there are times when that is a force for justice and good in the world. And certainly I think Serge's point in the chat is important as well, that, due process and following appropriate procedures are important as well. And Leslie's topic brought that up a lot as well yesterday too, that having safeguards in place and procedures in place to protect folks is important. All character assassins shouldn't have the last word, but sometimes character assassins do bring up really important information and information that we need to act on in order to protect others, as the Me Too movement shows really clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. Rod, there's a comment, please go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things, there was the Secretary of Labor in the Reagan administration was a guy by the name of Ray Donovan, and he had been charged with, kind of having dealings with people that were fairly unsavory business characters, and it was investigated and so forth. And it turned out that it wasn't true. He knew some people, but his business dealings were fine. And he asked, they had a news conference when he was kind of cleared, and he says, so now where do I go get my reputation back? And yes, I agree that, some forms of character assassination are ways of getting justice, but there's also a lot of, aspects of character assassination where it doesn't turn out to be that way, but getting the restoral of the reputation is a much more difficult process. Crimes are reported on page 1. acquittals are reported on page 46, so.
Well, this is exactly what we teach our students. Yes, it's very difficult to build one's reputation. It's so easy to ruin it.
Yeah.
That's what we teach our students, and well, I think everybody else. So, any comments and questions, please? And
I would say let's open it up for some last thoughts, and if folks don't have any, then we can.
Like a last call.
Yes, yes. I wish that our last call could be enjoying mimosas together in person, but we will just have a last call for comments, thoughts, things you're going to work on and think more about in the future.
And we hope that next time we'll be seeing each other live, not mask to mask, but face to face, and maybe a hybrid, some on Zoom. But we'll be meeting together. We are planning this. We're planning this. As soon as the situation is getting better, will get better. Certainly, we'll make an announcement about our next meeting.
And I will say too, there are lots of ways to get in touch with us. You certainly have Serge's email from his hard work planning the conference, but at CARP_lab on Twitter. I'm not particularly active on Facebook, but the Facebook group I know is active. So for those of you that have, as my students always tell me, no one's on Facebook anymore, but if you are, you can find some of us there. But sorry, okay, last thoughts.
We are on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we are in TikTok, we're Instagram. And so LinkedIn, just LinkedIn, LinkedIn, we are there too. So we're trying to occupy the media, and we're developing.
Just to make it easier for people to assassinate our characters in the future, we figured we would cover all the social media.
But we have immunity already.
Yeah.
Our research, your research. Thank you so much for your contribution. Thanks so much for being with us and being patient. And so it's a long weekend and Sunday. Well, once again, our emails, please email us. Let's cooperate. Let's meet in future. And once again, thank you so much for being so kind and so awesome.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your wonderful work with us this weekend. And we do hope to continue collaborating in the future and to see you face to face. I don't know if there are any communication scholars on the call, but if you will be at NCA in person, I've decided to make the trip so we could also connect there. And Serge has been dropping in the chat some links to our social media. Morgan, our amazing intern, is behind Instagram, and she's provided our handle in there as well. But again, looking so much forward to seeing you in person at some point. And thank you for sharing your work with us this weekend and for being willing to engage in this digital format. You guys blow my students out of the water.
And as Yuri said, to be continued.